she's like, so she'll give birth in April, and then we're married in July.
We got enough for a meaningful forum to do stuff.
She's like, this is fine, and I'm like, what else sucks?
When I was little, I was very stressed, just like you guys. I didn't know how to
where
do
like I
it.
feel like I felt so guilty about saying enough yesterday that I woke up and I started studying.
You guys are gonna be just fine. I remember I was very
I bring my book to the gym. I'm like, you're all about like reading, and I'm going, yeah. I just got back. I like read them, and I'm like, on me a little bit.
I said the other day, I was like, this has been happening for 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I think about travel all
Everybody in
the
this room
time.
wants to be. You want everybody in this room.
Yeah. I loved it.
Um,
I really, because like Alabama had a, like if you had a certain GPA, you could just roll in.
I know.
Without anything else at. Yeah, and their law school's really nice, and I thought about it. Like, I don't want to be away from community longer. You're right. But now, their football team, they're still there.
Yeah.
I asked that because I'm hearing things, that they don't want board members on the committee. I was like, okay, I think that's questionable. And I want to know if it's coming from the whole like, committee itself. That's exactly what you want on the committee. Or is that just something that Anthony Hall?
I was at Doc's friend today, she was like, I'm tired of the last 2 weeks, and I was like, not at all.
Not at all, yeah. I feel with you, so I'm like, I'm stressed out. I'm having fun with it.
My issue.
Yeah.
Graduated.
We've done all of the commitments now, we're like, that's enough.
Okay, everybody, we're going to call order here, 7:35, get started. First thing is to adopt our agenda and approval for the minutes from the previous meeting that are on YouTube. We did have a pretty late substantial change to the agenda here. We rescheduling the presentation we had initially had for the quality initiative from the higher learning commission reaccreditation work. So we will be scheduling that in the spring semester. So we have changed that from our meeting agenda for the evening. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda approval of the minutes. And so moved.
Motion.
So motion, is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Seeing none opposed, motion passes. All right. So the next item of business is speakers from the floor. Set aside 15 minutes on our changed agenda for anything that someone has from the floor.
I did want to say, just since I've taken this time from the floor to talk about our international students. So I did recently have a communication meeting with the provost, Provost Dalala, as far as being the grievance officer for Graduate Assistants United. And at this time, a task force has been created by the administration that will be reviewing. So it consists of the HR department, members from CIU, which is the Center for International Student Education, the provost office, as well as a couple different offices on the campus, the graduate school, and a few others. And so what they're going to be doing is they realize that it is a systematic problem, that there is no individual or anyone, it is the system as a whole. So they're reevaluating everything and trying to rework it from the ground up. So that students don't have to go through this, because it was very alarming that students who missed their first and second paychecks, as I had mentioned last time. So hopefully this issue will be resolved in the upcoming year, but I will keep you informed of how that progresses. And I know that what was mentioned to me is that, you know, the chancellor, when he had heard this, was very disappointed in that news, that our students were facing food, facing hunger, so, you know, not being able to eat, and potentially even being evicted and facing homelessness. So it's a very serious issue, and I'm happy that it is going to be addressed.
So does that task force have any international students member?
I'm sorry, say again?
Does it have the task force?
No, it just has. I mean, I did suggest that in the past that I felt that it would be really important to have those voices. I do have a grievance meeting on behalf of international students who are grieving that the lack of that payment to them, and so I might suggest in that meeting that they be included, or that members from, if not the International Student Council, be included on that, so they can kind of help disclose any stories or any things that have happened to them directly that maybe other students don't feel confident disclosing or may not have been, that they may not take the time to learn about if not. So there's other things too. That's part of the problem, and how we communicate with these students and let them know and have an understanding and bettering that communication, I think, is also an important aspect of it. And that's where the student voice really comes in. But I do appreciate that suggestion, and I'll make sure to bring that into my meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, I can see how the International Students Council can represent that, but the person who went through the experience knows how bitter it is.
Yes.
So my suggestion would be like one of those who were impacted. They know how it feels, so they will advocate more deeply, rather than if I'm a representative, I'm just from a specific constituency because I represent that group or like community in campus. So I think
I do agree, because it is often like how one vocalizes it, because sometimes it's like, well, if it's a miscommunication by the student, where it was really just a miscommunication, both by faculty members, by CIE, by the graduate school, by international student center or international tax office. So there's many opportunities for miscommunication, but often that is placed on them as a scapegoat. And mainly because for some of them that English is not their first language, and so many of them felt very offended by that. That was the response by some people, where they're like, I speak pretty English pretty well, and I don't promise you it's not me. I've dotted all my I's, crossed my T's. So I think it is important that they can share any sort of miscommunications that were occurring, that otherwise it's very easy for people in the room not to disclose that, or not to think about that when thinking about how to make changes. So I'll bring that up to those who are grievance, and I will bring that into the meeting tomorrow. That I think it'd be good that a member from that group be represented on the task force.
Any other items, business for the floor? Seeing none, I'll move us to our next item of old business. The letter for the concerns with the search for the provost, vice chancellor for academic affairs. Did complete. I apologize for how late in the day I'm getting the letter to you for our review. But I printed off the letter for us to look at. Also printed it with everyone's copy should have those line numbers on it, so that if there's anything anyone wants to change for the letter, hopefully that facilitates changes, amendments. So I can read the letter for us aloud if that's what we want to do, or if something.
I don't mind reading.
I mean, reading is procedure.
Yeah. I think that is appropriate.
Yeah. All right. This is actually working tonight. It sounds like it is. Somewhat. All right. So for the letter, I'm trying to do my best here to write a letter like this. Haven't necessarily done a letter where there's a mix of professionalism and also sort of a bit of the stick involved with it. And I also threw in a bunch of footnotes for a lot of these things, which I think is interesting. And for nothing else, I think anyone that looks at the letter, including ourselves, be able to go back and see some of these things that have happened that are relevant to the case itself, whether it's a piece of policy or whether it's a previous news story that is part of the context. So also the idea of thinking about the letter reaching other eyes than just necessarily the Chancellor's office. So Chancellor Dunn, the Graduate Professional Student Council, wishes to convey through this letter our concerns with the internal search for a provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs. You initiated this search on October 1st, 2019, and have provided this decision follows from the interest in permanent administrative hires many have expressed. For example, members of the Board of Trustees, SIU President, persons at the university, and others throughout the community. Our council understands this search and hire will likely be completed prior to the completion of the search for a new SIU Carbondale Chancellor. We also understand your rationale for the format of and timing for this internal search is to ensure the provost is from SIU Carbondale when our chancellor and president will not be, avoid any delays associated with any needs of the new chancellor to acclimate to campus, provide stability for the campus and university affairs via provost institutional knowledge, serve as an asset for Carbondale Chancellor via provost institutional knowledge, facilitate speedy and effective transition for new Carbondale Chancellor. Our council is nonetheless struggling to understand the appropriateness for limiting the search internally. Our concern follows in part from the Illinois Inspector General's findings concerning past hires which did not follow or evaded existing policy. With this heightened awareness and subsequent review of SIU Carbondale's existing policies, our hiring procedures appear to suggest, quote, applicant availability and position characteristics influence, if not determine, the format for the announcement and search, while further identifying, quote, upper level administrative positions as those, quote, generally advertised nationally. In our understanding of the position requirements, applicant availability, and the position's role within the university, we are unsure if the provided rationales for an internal search meet the standard of our hiring procedures. Our council is also struggling to understand the appropriateness for the timing of the search. In our expectations for successful searches, candidates are evaluated and chosen according to expectations and requirements outlined by those to whom the individual will report. In the current arrangement, we do not see these criteria sufficiently met. The ongoing search for a new SIU president is only now coming to a conclusion, and a search for the next SIU Carbondale Chancellor is only just beginning. As our council understands, candidates are applying, and any hire for the position would accept this appointment without knowing who their boss will be, a situation Interim President Dorsey previously identified as sufficient reason to proceed with the search and hire of a permanent SIU president prior to a search and hire of a permanent Carbondale Chancellor. In our understanding of this context, we are unsure of A, how candidates have sufficient clarity to pursue the position prior to our next chancellor being hired and defining the expectations and requirements for the position, and B, how the search committee and others in the hiring process may accurately and effectively evaluate the qualifications of candidates to meet those expectations and requirements prior to our next chancellor's involvement in defining them. We thank you for receiving our letter and the advisement we have attempted to provide within. The Graduate and Professional Student Council assumes its role within the governance of the university affairs and advisement in the university's administrative affairs with deep commitment and professionalism. We hope this is reflected and received from our letter. However, in the context of these facts, in our council's current evaluation, we have deep concerns with the format and timing of the internal search for SIU Carbondale's next provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs. We have summarized above our two concerns and request additional clarity. We encourage you to contact our officers and arrange for sharing what additional information you find relevant for our council's consideration. And it's undersigned there. So I did get an email about some potential language changes, but I can't actually see what those recommendations were in the email because I don't have, I think, Word to be able to open the file right. Rachel, I think, sent it to us. Yes. Well, I have Word, I just don't have Word on the tablet. And so to see it in real time, it would be a PDF, it would probably be
the query saying, but otherwise, it's just opening, I think, a plain text.
One thing I did notice was 123 permanent school. That might be.
Yeah. So speaking to the language, I think on line 22, like the first pronoun you, it sounds to me very direct. And I would recommend if it's possible to change that. So this search committee has been formed on this day to do this and that.
I don't know if the committee was technically formed. It might be safer to say this search was initiated on October 1st. If that makes sense, because we don't know the exact details.
Yeah, because say if I am the chancellor and I receive this letter and it's telling me you, I would like, okay, so we're having a fight here.
Well, I mean, they created space, so we need to stop playing with honey, because they clearly don't want to listen to us in general. I'm coming from.
I appreciate that. I think that actually makes, I mean, like, on the professional level of this letter, I think it makes sense if this search was initiated on.
And I also, I'm feeling, thank you for what you said, but also sometimes it's important to build more communication channels to make yourself understandable and clear, rather than people get it in a different meaning. That's what I meant by.
Oh, I completely understand.
You.
Yeah, I'm just on a different, I'm sick of playing nice with these people that are not listen to me for 10 years.
I think that's nice, we are on both different sides of the spectrum.
I think also, just for additional clarification too, this search ended on October 30th. And so, so just so people know, like the timeline, at least of the internal search. And so, so this will be coming post that too, just so everybody understands that.
So did they have?
So, I think it's interesting, and I mean, I don't know how much of this I technically should disclose, but there was a very limited number of applicants, which actually to me does already make it a failed search, which forces which would force a national search, because typically you need a certain number, right? Meet a certain number expectation, and they
want to include that.
Yeah, and they
Since
decide.
it is coming after the search is already over, then we may want to include that, say something to the extent that this was a limited search and not.
And to me, it provides evidence that it was a very, I mean, like it already does it itself, like function that, I can't say that, I can't disclose what happened on the committee or what was received.
Yeah.
But I can say it was a very limited number, and it will likely be forced into a national search, just because you can't run another internal search with the number that they had and expect anything different.
I will say, in response to that issue, because that was something I've heard the scuttle in the sense of the number of how many persons applied for the position, because applications closed the 30th of October, but I haven't heard an official thing on that, and so I didn't want to put something in there that essentially isn't a verified piece of official information. As well as I wanted it to speak.
Definitely should have received an email confirmation on that though.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten anything back, and then I haven't necessarily gotten anything in the sense of this is something that can be reported.
Okay, gotcha.
Because
I know our GAU read it.
The members of the committee have probably been informed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that they're able to share, or at least at this time, or what the particular aspects of that are. And then it also doesn't necessarily, like, it may be a change to the information, and it is something that if we want to try and find a way to add it into this, we are more than capable of doing so. In writing this and having that awareness while I was writing this, The thing that kept in my mind was like, if that's something that is like an update to an ongoing situation as it develops, that's one thing. But whereas the letter's responding to our initial concerns, or at least formalizing those and submitting them, if it's something where we submit a subsequent memorandum, you know, a couple of days later or something like that, to also then address like some concerns that now we've heard there aren't that many applicants or even a sufficient number of applicants in most persons' eyes, then we're able to submit that memorandum subsequently. And all we're doing is just building a slow paper trail. And we're building a file of, look, these are our concerns, they're piling up. But the idea that the initial catalyst here is for filing what are our concerns is just like right off the bat. Now, if we develop more in addition to that, that's an interesting part of the overall process. That's a question for everyone to consider, whether or not you want to add that in now, or whether that's something you want to review more, or how we want to handle that as part of the business.
Yeah, sorry, just defining that we can add to the advice letter, that would be like, again, a good question that there is a rumor, whatever we like phrase that about the number of the applicants, but we are wondering why it's happening, because again, numbers do not tell a story, what is going on, but also we are concerned what is going on. So even like with limited numbers, but why limited numbers, rather than we only have 1 or 2 or 3. So it's not just the number, but the reason behind this small number.
Yes. And I would say in the way that this currently articulates 2 concerns, I went with 2. I felt like that those were the strongest ones that we had, as well as the footnotes that back those up, is the idea of whether or not the actual existing policy on how you conduct a search and the relevant criteria to evaluate the format of a search actually justifies or is consistent with the rationale being used to justify the way that the search format is being done right now. And then the context in which those positions are filled through a search, whether that makes sense in the context of other things that are going on at the university. And so those are really substantively different from the idea of the number of applications. Because even if it is an internal search and we got 47 applications for that internal search, these things still remain the same. Now, if then after the fact we don't get that many applications, then that's just another aspect of what may be a concern. But these sort of are independent of that additional concern or contemporaneous one. Yes?
I would say that until that information is released officially, I would want to refrain from making the addition, because it potentially takes away from the seriousness of our concerns, because it's operated on word of mouth, which I'm not saying is inaccurate, but it's not official yet. And so it's a concern that would be coming from information sources that are not yet recognized in a legitimate sense. Whereas the concerns that we're having here are to be taken seriously.
All right, and I do now have the recommended friendly amendments on a few grammatical things, some improvements. We can run through those. We're doing pretty good with the time that I allocated, I think, for the most part for this. No, we're getting close a little bit. Is there any other comments on the floor, or I'll rattle off a couple of these friendly amendments here. It looks like in line 20, this letter concerns, this letter our concerns with, instead make that convey through this letter our concerns regarding. Anyone oppose that friendly amendment? I would accept that friendly amendment to the letter. See none opposed? Then yes, the spelling error for permanent in line 23. So correcting that. reflect what it should be PRMANENT, I guess. Correct? The word correct, spelling correct, even freaked out on that. Let's see. Then line 29, change that with the removal of any. Avoid delays associated with any. No. And then actually remove the second any, it looks like. So avoid delays associated with the new chancellor's acclamation to campus. So change it to reflect that. Avoid delays associated with the new chancellor's acclamation to campus. Any opposed? Any opposed? I would accept that as friendly amendment. See, on that next line, I believe we're looking at line 30. Change to provide stability for campus and university affairs via provost institutional knowledge. So removal of the any opposed? All right. And I believe there's another one here for 31. The addition, they replace via with per to read serve as an asset for Carbondale Chancellor per provost institutional knowledge. Being opposed? And line 33. Let's see. Our council, to change 33 to read, our council is nonetheless concerned about the appropriateness of limiting the search to internal candidates.
If we want to use stronger wording, I believe this, honestly. If you're wanting more of the stake in it up, as this is.
Okay. Any additional comments on that? Let's see. In line 34, another potential change here would be from the Illinois Inspector General's findings regarding in place of concerning past hiring processes. All right. I think now I'm getting into the ones where it is, there's a couple on the second page, and so that's what I might do at this point. Are there particular ones remaining of these potential friendly amendments that you feel strongly about? I think
It's true, it's in there twice.
The very last, in line 65, there's
relevant for with our council's consideration. I wasn't sure which.
Oh, yeah. You have it replaced with 2. Yeah, or 4. I think 4 might be the best, so that it reads information you find relevant for our council's consideration. Yeah, that's pretty clear-cut typo. For your request additional clarification, there's some here in the end that I'm looking at now that additional clarity and clarification. Yeah, I think you might be right. It does seem a little bit better. For line 43, you changed it to additionally the appropriateness of the timing. Appropriateness for the timing of the search is unclear to our council. That first sentence, I think that having it be a different format is stronger than the repeated phrase.
Are you keeping struggling to understand on line 33?
Yeah, I think that one works well there instead of.
Well, so certainly a more stern tone, and I like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that that's one of the clearest cut parts for not only our council and our discussion that we had in a previous meeting, but also for others on campuses that just don't understand. Like everyone's struggling to understand this quite literally why now and why an internal search. And so, yeah, I think that that's pretty accurate. I think the comment is well received in the idea that it is sterner, that it is a little bit more of a professional way of pushing the issue. But we do improve that second paragraph with the additionally the appropriateness for the timing of the search is unclear to our council. Because we are asking for clarity there. So that's definitely a better way to articulate that.
Line 44 does use the word expectations twice in the same sentence. I don't know if that bothers anybody, but.
What was the line again, please?
Line 44?
Yeah. Begins on the very end of 43. In our expectation for successful searches, candidates are evaluated and chosen according to expectations and requirements outlined by those to whom the individual report. I also didn't know if to whom there is the right use, so I never know any idea.
Yeah, I think the double expectations, it reads weird to me.
Friendly amendment for which to change or which to strike.
I feel like since you have an N, you have according to expectations and requirements, you could remove that and just say according to requirements outlined by,
Yeah,
that's probably the easiest.
We'll accept that. So changes to and chosen according to requirements. To requirements outlined by those to potentially who. I think whom works there. I really don't know. Anything else? And so with this, you have hopefully picked up in addition, which seems to have not brought over to the. If the language for the letter itself is not ideal, the language in the resolutions that I've thrown together for this evening may be even less than ideal. But we have that resolution 009, resolution to submit letter of concern. It's more or less just procedurally something that we can all look at and agree to what we're doing. It would be easy enough to pass just via be a motion in the sense of, yeah, we're okay with how we have friendly amended, or otherwise make changes to the letter that you're presented with tonight for communication. But we've got R1920.009 as the formal resolution. And so that's something someone could move that we take up the question for. It's not necessarily a resolution I'm actually presenting for the council. It's just one that I put together so that we can move on the letter itself with greater ease and clarity if we want. It says 9 and I freaked out. And then I remember this weekend we went back an hour. I was like, how is it 9? It's 8.
But actually what happened with me today every morning. I'll be watching now. I'm late. And then I realized now.
Any further discussion, questions, comments, amendments, friendly or otherwise, for the letter? Any questions on procedure, next steps? We can also move to table if we wanted to do that.
I think with the time windows being that the search ended last week, I feel like we are on a certain time limitation, or like there's a certain timeliness expectation of that, in my opinion. So that if we were to wait another 2 weeks, it means that the importance of that is.
As the notice committee, the search committee, you don't want to wait.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Excellent.
That's kind of what I mean.
Excellent.
Like you want to, we should vote on this today if this is something that we want to do, and like send it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, but.
I appreciate that. That's what I was trying to get at, but your articulation of that is really good.
If the representative would like to call the question with resolution R1920.009, would entertain a motion.
Bethany, would you suggest do you have any changes to it that, as you see being an insider, that would be beneficial for us to get in that document?
I would just say that don't be afraid to be stern. Like, I think that that's an important aspect to us voicing our concerns. We had our first meeting this morning.
I know you can't disclose everything in that meeting. I know that a lot of that is confidential. A little birdie told me though that we didn't have very many applicants. A little birdie told me that. And you know, so birdies have been chirping that we haven't had many applicants. And to me, that to me signifies a failed search. That we were debating whether or not, because this can only be rumored because it has not been made official, the number of applicants, or what they want to do with the number of applicants for which they received. And so because it's not through appropriate channels, you're talking about not including that. There was something that was still placed on the floor, whether or not we want to include some sort of thing of expectation of like as far as meeting the requirements and expectations.
So I'll bring those that have come in up to speed. Right now, we've done a read through of the letter as it was submitted through the email. We have the printed copy with the line numbering on it, and then we have been going through some markup of the letter itself with some friendly amendments, some on the front end with some decent amount of changes to the language, the phrasing, and a few key aspects changed a little later in it as far as phrasing. And that is where we are. We've done some markup on the language itself of the letter, not changing anything as far as the structure or substance of what is said, but just a little bit of how it is said and changing some grammar. That is where we are. It is 8:12. We budgeted originally for 15 minutes on this, and so I believe we still have a lot to, within a reasonable reasonable amount of time to talk about with this. And so, so long as everyone is all right, we'll continue on this agenda item.
Yeah, that's several people who walked in, so makes sense.
But that is where we are right now. We've done a markup. I could try and do a marked up reading for the letter, but I might struggle a little bit with that, and you may not get at the current moment 100% accurate one because I'm working on two different systems right now, both paper and electronic. And then we also have the resolution that I brought to council for us to consider with how we actually deliver and represent the letter in the sense of the voice of the council and its purpose. No motion is on the floor. Right now, we just have been doing friendly amendments and markup for the letter itself. Continue considering friendly amendments or otherwise amending the letter and any other business there. Again, I apologize for not getting this out to everyone earlier. I hope that I've given you a reasonable number of materials to work through this evening. If it pleases the council, I can try and do another amended reading. Jeff?
Yeah. Sorry, I just deleted.
No?
That's not how my brain works. But to answer your question, Diana, I think that you can discuss because of the short time span that the search did go on, you can assume that there would naturally be less because of that. So you can bring up there being less applicants than
if there was an extended search done.
yes.
Right.
Yeah. I would bring that up as well.
Yeah.
So,
Just something to the extent of, like you said, due to the time frame and the
Yeah,
lack
Because
of
we
it
did
being-
discuss that, how
So,
it only lasts.
let's maintain order just so that I can keep everything straight. So you have the floor, I guess, for now.
So, like you said, like with the lack of time and the lack of it being, or the fact that it's an internal search, you're automatically gonna have less applicants. So that may just be a fact that you just put in. I think that could fit somewhere within, I'd say probably within that 43 to 51 range, somewhere within there. You just state something to the extent of the timing and the nature of the search limits us in a capacity, just in general. Limits the options.
Diana, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, because I think it goes to where, it kind of once again speaks to the point, because you kind of set a standard, or you already articulated what is our typical standard, right? Is that it is naturally advertised to begin with, and that, like something thinking about these expectations and standards of successful searches. This does not meet that because of the time limitations and the, I know we can't really disclose it, but I think that it naturally does limit the number of applicants for which you can receive. So I don't know if we have a call for action though, that a consideration of extension be made if this were to occur, or that then that consideration of national search be. So I don't know if a call to action is also something for consideration this moment as well.
Yes, I had considered that as a part of the letter and whether we would call for action. In my initial thinking, the idea was that we at least submit our concerns for reaction and response, and at least provide for the opportunity to receive them, if not not receive them, and then follow up with something thereafter. One of the big concerns I had was making sure that we were all on the same page and speaking as a single voice as a council with what it was we were expressing as concerns, since that was something that after the motion in our last meeting we didn't quite have. If I can continue on, one thing that I would say is I would potentially add in this aspect of the number of applicants in the lines 40 through 42 with the first numbered aspect. The numbered aspects are sort of going to the crux of what it is that we're sort of asking for, and this is needing clarity or not having an understanding for, or there being some otherwise deficit to the process in the way that it has been formatted and timed and structured. And so it'd be something in the idea of, in our understanding of the position requirements, applicant availability, and the position's role within the university, we are unsure of the provided rationales for an internal search meet the standard of our hiring procedures, and then essentially adding in something and to detriment to the number of qualified applicants under consideration for the position or something to that effect. Because it's hitting in that same idea where that the first part that ends in the number 1 item there is speaking to the internal search aspect, and number 2, the following paragraph speaking more specifically to the timing within the context of everything else going on at the university.
Bethany's hand was actually at first.
Bethany, I'll go to you. Okay, yeah, sure.
Are we making assumptions on why there's a short turnout for people that apply for the position? Because why I'm bringing that up is, and I don't know how to word it, so correct me if I'm wrong, or somebody shut up. It seems that it'd be a flawed search to begin with, and the person, one of the people that are in the pool is also the boss of people internally.
Yeah.
So it seems
That was Dave Johnson's concern, that
Okay.
is his letter, is that everybody who's applying is also applying against their current boss.
And so I'm speaking on that just because some people in this audience may have not gotten Dave Johnson's letter. And so that's also be why there's the fear of, hey, I apply, I'm going against somebody that already has the position, that I could be X, or another word I won't use because I get off the back of compliance meetings all the time. Retaliation moves. So that's one of the things that comes to mind. That's, I know how to word that, why I was saying that, but just.
No, it was articulated. I don't know how strongly that was brought up in our last meeting, but people do have access to data.
Okay, perfect, gotcha.
And that was something that did come up as a part of a lot of our discussion on the floor last meeting. I left that out, if for nothing else, there's nothing within policies that actually strictly prohibits that kind of conflict of interest, which is in and of itself something. And so what I did try to do in the alternative is lines 36 through 38, capturing what does exist within the policies that I reviewed at least and was recommended to review from some input. That Carbondale's existing policies, our hiring procedures, appear to suggest applicant availability and position characteristics influence, if not determine, the format of the announcement of the search. So ultimately, that can speak to the idea that if you're hiring a vice chancellor's position, or even in the context of a chancellor's position and doing an internal search for a non-interim appointment to that position, you're potentially doing something where you're creating that conflict of interest where someone would be applying against their boss in the instance of, say, a sitting interim chancellor and doing an internal search for chancellors, or in the instance of a vice chancellor for administrative academic affairs. Same sort of things.
I think that we just need to, whatever we decide on, I guess we should make it our concern to be strongly voiced. And I understand sticking to policy for some of it because it's good to reference, but our concerns are still like important and valid as a council because there has to be buy-in from whoever is chosen. Because you see how that flows backwards when there's not. So even if it isn't directly attached to a policy, the fact that it's a point of concern still should be brought up. And like we don't have to go around the bush or hit straight. So let's go from there.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that we need to make it very strong about our concerns, but also my concern on those concerns is again, we go through the same process that happened with the restructuring, where we are investing a lot of meetings and time and people's time coming to the meeting for a number of days, and then those like objections are being put aside, and they're going ahead with what they have already planned. At the time, yes, we needed to make our concerns voiced and very clear, very loud, but also I'm concerned about this council time again going to the same side with a new issue.
I completely agree with what you're saying. This just helps me get ammunition to be able to fight within that room. And so that's why I want it to be as strong and as clear cut as can be, because then I have our documentation to back me up, and it's not just, a first year master's student just rambling about. Because we're not the only ones that have these concerns, and if we don't give it to them, I know this can be time consuming, but this is gonna move quickly, and so if we don't take the time right now and do it, then we didn't say anything, then we have to shut up and put up anyway.
But also, I would like to know how and who is perceiving such a document as a file. Are we trying to fight against those people? Are we pushing in and back? Or are we trying to build communication channels to make ourselves understood? So what is the discourse behind such documents and saying yes or no? I'm starting and having tough time with that.
I'll jump in first and I come back to you, Diane. First and foremost, what this will do is codify formally the voice of the council. And first and foremost, that is what it is. That's why I'm going through the procedural, just like workmanship of having us actually deliberate, mark up, and pass formally, is that it will function as the official word of the council. And so we'll have that level of formality. And with that, I'll.
Sure. I mean, I appreciate that you said, in a sense, who's the audience, right? Because I almost do question if we should widen the audience to also think about the selection committee itself and how we might, to make sure that they are seeing this, understand this, and I know that we have the individual in the room to speak on our behalf, but thinking about those procedural things that they have to also be conscious of and mindful of too, because it's also their procedural, so if we are speaking with in terms of procedure, their procedural duty to also make sure that it is a not a failed search, that it is an adequate search that permits this, according to what you have here at number 1, the standards for which we do these type of searches. And so if I'm just going to throw out, so if they had lesser than a handful, or whatnot, is that enough? If they have less than these figures, is that enough? If they have just this figure, is that enough? Is this enough to be a credible search? There's not saying anything, I'm just suggesting. So if it's not a credible search, right, then it's already flawed. They should take into consideration that and move forward to the Board of Trustees and just say we must extend this because that is not an adequate search. It is simply flawed. We've created conflict of interest for applicants to apply against an individual or whatever it might be. And so maybe broadening that because you want it to have legs and for it to have impact. Because so in that sense, we might also think about broadening our audience and how we are giving. If this really serves as and like you be able to take this and use it internally within that room, as well as the individuals who also do make those decisions and have to make the final call on how to proceed forward. And we might also just extend our voice.
It is also possible to do that with multiple statements. Because obviously the audience, strictly written in the sense of the way that this is composed, is to the office of the chancellor. And so it is something that we can address with an additional statement. Or
However, I mean, yeah, we have options. Whether that's something we add into this document, whether that's something we do as an addendum to this document.
So might be an addendum to the resolution.
Yeah, we also, yeah, additional things can be written into the resolution itself.
However we want to do it. However we want to do it, it should be also directed to the chair of the committee, because Chancellor Dunn gave us the charge, but then how it's conducted is completely up to our committee. Sugu is the chair.
What's up, one later? Great day. Wow. Yeah, karaoke, if anybody wants to. Wow.
The karaoke time, you just.
Well, that upset me. Conflict of interest, people. Conflict of interest. Outdoors. Be careful.
Sorry. I don't know who else is looking back. That was hilarious. Dramatic drama.
I think as it reads, and with the other changes that we made, this can be sent to them as is. I don't think that there's really any essential changes, like outside ones that we had already discussed, that would need to be added at least, or like phrasing change or anything like that. Maybe instead of your throat, instead like things like that.
Yeah, procedurally, someone can make a motion to approve or to call the question, like we have the resolution that we can use to actually approve it. And the way that I wrote that up, that's the R1920.209, the resolution to submit letter of concern. Someone can make just a motion from the floor for it. The biggest thing is I wanted to have a clear understanding of what the council wishes to be done with the letter, and for things like to whom to address it in the sense of all of the addressees, things like that. And so the resolution potentially gives us a tool to do that with clarity and most effectively.
Motion to approve the letter?
Motion to approve the letter, second? Yes, it would be as amended, marked up. Though the amendments that we have are mostly pertaining to the language. There's been a number of things that have been discussed in addition to that that aren't necessarily part of what was already accepted as a friendly amendment. Yes, right now there is no motion on the resolution. Unclear whether your motion calls forward the resolution itself for the approval or just the approval of the letter.
I'm confused now.
So resolution,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I wrote the letter. The letter is what was called for by the motion last meeting.
Okay.
Now we can approve the letter, and that's good. And then I could hypothetically interpolate or accept out of that motion, or it could be amended. The idea is like communicate this letter to the chancellor, potentially other individuals, however it goes. The resolution is just specifically in writing so that it's clear everybody's on the same page. And so I don't bring the resolution to the floor. I just bring the resolution to the meeting here for us to use. So
Clarification.
yeah.
Are we adding the friendly amendment to kind of like the language that we discussed into point 1 or line 40 or before that, kind of talking about extending concepts of priority procedures and expectations of the search committee and all that good stuff, or was that?
40 through 42 with the number of applicants
Yeah.
piece, amended that. No, I didn't have final language on it. I am open to a friendly amendment that adds language for that, but I don't necessarily know what language we have for it. We do have a motion on the floor for approval of the letter. Though. Do we want to lay that motion on the table? Start the motion. It hasn't received a second yet.
So to not add the language regarding,
I didn't get it.
oh, I didn't have specifics.
But you're saying want to see the change
Yeah.
of the definition. So that means motion was second.
Yeah, I'm gonna say motion fails, and recognize that. So do we have an additional amendment or friendly amendment for those lines 40 through 42? They currently read, with the existing friendly amendment, in our understanding of the position requirements, applicant availability, and the position's role within the university, we are unsure if the provided rationales for an internal search meet the standard of our hiring procedures. And under consideration is a friendly amendment or otherwise amendment to add language addressing how the format of the search would affect the number of applicants for the position.
But do you want the actual language, or you just want approval that we want language in there?
Having the actual language is
Okay. So I make sure we're on the same page. So language. I'm trying to figure out like a word to say like standards would include like a minimum number of applicants, which is may not have been met due to the expedited timeline of an internal search, right? Like something along that line is what we're talking about, right? Am I on the right track?
Or, I mean, there would be conflicts of interest, you know, like saying, like, you know, like, because I think that is been brought up multiple times. And that in anything, right, there's, so limitations of applicant availability, increased concerns and conflict of interest, and or inefficient number of applications or something like that.
Yeah, so how would we define like limited number? What is limited number of applicants for that position?
You don't have to be specific, we can have it as vague language, it doesn't matter.
Well, and I would even rephrase it as something that, I don't know if that actually qualifies as like an affirmative statement, but rather than saying that you're trying to define what's insufficient, rather than just the idea that there's a sufficient number of applications.
Like one would not be sufficient.
Right. Then you're gonna, like, otherwise what you're doing is putting yourself into a position where you're gonna be arguing over what is the insufficient number of applicants. And what most persons would probably instead be wanting to do is argue about the sufficient number of applicants. And so actually addressing it in that way. And I think to the points raised by Lindy, one of the easiest ways to pivot into that would be standard of our hiring procedures, comma, including but not limited to, and then going in.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to add, like, could we say, like, you know, our council's concerns would be, like, we talked about, like, that narrow window of opportunity for applicants could result in insufficient numbers of, like, qualified applicants, something like that. I don't know if it's, like, typical to have, like, you know, a hiring for a position of that magnitude being a month long.
I would say, in my time, I'm working in institutions, I don't think that timeline for an internal search is abnormal, but for a level of that search feels abnormal. Does that make sense? So like there's other times that internal searches happen and
Use the word level, use the level word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I do think that's the difference, is that a general commonplace internal search usually does have a quick timeline of like anywhere between like 10 days, 2 weeks to a month. But at the level of the search is unusual to have like that many, like have it be so quick. So we'll also internal, but that's like a whole other thing, which we talked about. That's why I agree with that, or quick turnaround, which I guess is what I already voiced.
I do like you're setting this, I do like the approach of setting the standard of expectation, in that. Your original suggestion, and then kind of then adding on to what our expectations are.
Yeah.
Contracts are.
Sorry, I'm running the floor very well, but I'm trying to work on some language for it.
Actually, while you're doing that, I was gonna say, if everyone's comfortable, I also want to make kind of like a friendly amendment to the resolution, because it sounds like we wanted to address, or I would like to suggest, because I'm also up here and probably shouldn't be making a motion, just as a heads up, but if I could make a suggestion, that it probably would be good to friendly amend the resolution as well, because it sounds like we want to send it to the chair as well. And it's this resolution, this resolution only says chancellor, so maybe if someone feels also like I do, would be comfortable saying, like, perhaps we should make it addressed to both the chair and the chancellor.
Motion to amend it, saying that it's the chancellor and the board.
Second.
I just want to make sure.
Motion seconded, and we move to discussion. The one item that I would press on discussion is that we can actually do it different than a letter, and I can phrase it as a memorandum. And at that point, I can sort of CC a ton of different offices as it being an inter-unit memorandum. That pleases the motion. Is there a motion?
Discussion.
Yes.
With this friendly amendment, I would also like to add a line that we have the expectation to be shared with the committee. I'm not saying that they wouldn't.
Yes.
But we should put it in there.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I just don't know if they would.
If they-
I feel like they would, but just in case.
Okay. My approach would be to have the memorandum CC on the chair of the search. And you're speaking to having that memorandum shared with members of the committee. Understood that. Well, you are a representative on that committee, and I'll just CC you on it, and then, yes, yeah, that would be how I would approach it. But we are under discussion of the motion. I would request that, do we have a motion to withdraw that motion? I think.
Yeah, motion to withdraw to add, so that we can add the memorandum aspect.
Yeah.
Motion to add memorandum aspect.
So amend your original motion to restructure the letter as a memorandum, CCing all pertinent officers and offices and personnel involved in the search.
There we go.
Second, all those in favor of that amendment to the letter itself, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, motion to amend the letter and its structure and recipients passes. Okay, so we are still under discussion for the contents of the now memorandum. And so going back to the 40 to 42 line, would be standard of hiring procedures, comma, including but not limited to, providing sufficient time to receive applications, receiving sufficient numbers of applications, and then continuing on there. That's as far as I got with additional things. And I think that that's an effective way of starting to add in some of these other parts that are related to it being an internal search that others are raising.
I like this. Yeah, I was gonna say, how do people feel about
We can have like
those two editions, or do you want
something
them?
equivalent to this that are.
Yeah, or like a third to round it out. I mean, I don't know if there's a third that goes through.
Preventing any relevant conflicts of interest.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
conflicts of
there's,
interest, yeah.
that's the third one. If they're round, I like.
Any and all.
Yeah. So that's a catch-all to me. It's like you have to have that one that's like real good. The catch-all.
Also, as by the way, don't forget this part too.
Okay, so the friendly amendment relies on your numbered letter. Lines 40 to 42 would then read, in our understanding of the position requirements, applicant availability, and the position's role within the university, we are unsure if the provided rationales for an internal search meet the standard of our hiring procedures, including but not limited to providing sufficient time to receive applications, receiving sufficient numbers of applicants, and preventing any and all conflicts of interest. Any opposed to such friendly amendment? All right, seeing none opposed. Stop that.
That was the last one.
I think so.
Motion to approve the content.
All right, motion to approve the contents of the memorandum as it has been amended by friendly amendment or otherwise. It was seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion? Offering of amendments.
There was a second. That's what your final thoughts, basically.
All right. So this motion would approve the letter, or I'm sorry, approve the memorandum as amended without the resolution itself. All right. Seeing no discussion, no request for amendment. Call the question. All right. Now we'll need to get a count for this. So all those in favor of approving the composition as amended, friendly or otherwise, to the now memorandum and its so amended addressees, please raise your hand and indicate your approval. All right. Any of those opposed to the approval of the motion so stated, please indicate by raising your hand. Seeing none opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, everyone. That's pretty intense. That's good. So next order of business, new business. Okay, so with this one on the backside of the resolution 1920.009, we have resolution R1920.001, resolution on graduate tuition. Present this resolution for the council's consideration. Resolution for consideration by the Graduate Professional Student Council on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. Whereas Southern Illinois University Carbondale has since eliminated out-of-state tuition, allowing for non-Illinois resident domestic undergraduates pay the in-state tuition rate undergraduate courses and programs. I was throwing this one together at the last minute. However, not for graduate courses and/or programs. And whereas non-Illinois resident domestic graduate students still pay an out-of-state tuition rate for graduate courses and programs, even when a student is enrolled in joint bachelor's and master's programs, sometimes referred to as 4+1 degrees, that require one enroll in both undergraduate and graduate courses. Therefore, be it resolved, the Graduate Professional Student Council supports and recommends the elimination or otherwise reduction of out-of-state tuition rates for all graduate level coursework at Southern Illinois University Carbondale to a single in-state tuition rate. So essentially what I'm trying to do with the resolution is get us to on the record with a motion that actually says that we find it in the best interest of our students in the university to no longer charge for non-Illinois resident graduate students, so persons enrolled in graduate courses, that they pay the Illinois resident tuition rate. For persons that are not domestic students, there would still be an international tuition rate, just like there is for undergraduate. But the university, it's been a couple of years actually, got rid of out-of-state tuition for undergraduate students. A lot of persons aren't actually aware of that, but in the sense of if you live in Missouri and you're a Missouri resident, you live in the state of Washington, you live in the state of Florida, you can come to this university and get the same rate of tuition for an undergraduate student that someone that grew up right down the street gets. It's been that way for a couple of years. It has not been that way for graduate students. So if you are a student from a different state, you come here, you get charged a out-of-state tuition as a domestic citizen of the United States, but not as a resident citizen of the state of Illinois. That's a weird thing in and of itself, but one of the other aspects that's a hiccup to that is the idea of undergraduate students that come here and do 4+1 degrees, so a bachelor's and a master's degree in sort of a 5 combined years. When they start taking graduate courses, even though they have been, say, like a resident of Iowa all through undergrad and been paying the in-state tuition rate, once they start taking the graduate coursework, they start getting charged a non-Illinois resident tuition rate for the graduate courses. So all of a sudden now tuition is 2.5 times what it would be if they were an Illinois resident. So there's an inconsistency in even the way that we treat and bill students for those programs. There are other aspects of this that are interesting as well, in the sense of if you're paying the out-of-state tuition as a graduate student and you are, say, on an administrative assistantship, which there are many that are on administrative assistantships, and you go over that certain dollar amount of what tuition can be waived without paying taxes, well, since you're being billed as an out-of-state student at that tuition rate, the amount of what tuition waiver taxes you have to pay is substantially larger than someone that is being billed as the Illinois resident tuition rate for graduate students. And so there's actually a bunch of different effects. And so I bring the resolution not because of something that's necessarily new, but because in a couple of meetings that I've been in the last 2 weeks, it's been brought up by a number of different persons, including the encouragement of potentially Graduate Council itself passing a resolution articulating the idea that they are in favor of no longer billing graduate students for a non-Illinois resident out-of-state effectively tuition rate. And so I was trying to throw together a resolution quickly for us to consider in this meeting. There are definitely some grammatical errors in this, though.
Also, this is great to decide on because it is on the agenda for Thursday for graduate council members, yeah. And so we are gonna vote on it on behalf of graduate council, but as your representatives. So it's good for us to know how you feel about this resolution, because that will help us vote on your behalf as graduate council, who's also creating a resolution that's pretty almost identical to this. So you're helping us out, yeah, this is one of the things. Almost exactly what you did.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Does theirs have as many grammatical problems in it? Because if it doesn't, we can also just potentially adopt.
Do you want me to read this one so they can see how, or just?
Yeah, I mean, or I can read it, you can read it, it doesn't matter to me. But
Or I can.
So the resolution as it's currently written, not to say that it wouldn't be amended when it goes before the graduate council, but resolution on in-state tuition for graduate students. Whereas SIU has enacted a policy granting in-state tuition for all undergraduate students, regardless of residency, and whereas promotional materials state that SIU is a, quote, university without borders, end quote, and whereas the in-state tuition policy does not pertain to graduate students who must pay out-of-state tuition, and whereas the number of accelerated master's programs at SIU has grown by, apparently it needs to be determined, the percent of increase over the past X years, The students who begin in these programs would have to pay an out-of-state tuition rate when they become classified as graduate students. And whereas in-state tuition for all domestic students could serve as a recruiting tool for graduate programs, be it therefore resolved that the SIU Graduate Council supports policy of charging in-state tuition for all domestic graduate students.
Is this system-wide or is it just Carbondale?
This would just be for the Carbondale University.
I would change the SAU on top because that makes it sound system-wide.
Well, for us, actually, that we can make that in the graduate council. But yeah, we could use this if that feels like it's saying what we want to say, and we also are mirroring what the graduate council says in its more consistent messaging also. Minus the percentage. Mark did say, I think they were going to add that percentage in. We did, yeah.
So I wanted to bring this up under new business just because I figured that it was potentially coming up before graduate council, but I didn't see it in the email, as well as it's something we can just jump out in front of for whenever they did actually take action on it, and then we could say, hey, we've done it as well, and now that we have that, essentially the administration, this is a board of trustees issue ultimately to change the tuition rate, but having the support of the constituency bodies to do so, in this case, it would be lowering the tuition, which is few and far between. But any change in tuition and fees, they do come before the constituency bodies, particularly student constituency bodies, to receive our voice on that. And so,
what are we supposed to do? Motion to approve that? Is that
Or which one?
Yeah, decide which one, and then make a motion on it, yeah.
So one was already the one that was by the graduate council, the last one was read, that was actually sent out by the graduate council. The first one read was just one that was created by Clay.
yeah.
So yeah, you have to decide which one, and then motion for it.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I might suggest that we, if one wanted to advance a motion for adopting one of these resolutions, I would suggest maybe using the one that has been formatted for the graduate council with some friendly amendments to the aspects of the percent change, things like that. Maybe just getting rid of those aspects of it through some friendly amendments and letting graduate council add that in where necessary.
Motion to adopt the resolution as written by the graduate council.
Motion to adopt the resolution by the graduate council as written. Motion is seconded. Motion is under discussion. Do we have any quick recommendations for friendly amendments to address some of those changes in language, adding in Carbondale, for instance?
Yeah.
Do you consider that a friendly amendment? Seeing none opposed, be a friendly amendment to add in Carbondale?
Like you said, maybe take out some unnecessary language.
I'm going to ask that we call this one basically like R1920.009. So, right. Sorry. Yeah. That is our where we are.
You said that, see. There says SIU, where ours says Southern Illinois University Carbondale. Do you want it spelled out or just SIUC? Yeah. I'm like anyone.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So yeah, SIUC has enacted a policy granting, to have it read like that, and then promotional materials state that SIUC is a university without borders. In-state policy, or in-state tuition policy does not pertain to graduate students who must pay out-of-state tuition. And I would say, and whereas there is a growing number of accelerated master's programs at SIUC.
Take out the percentages and stuff.
Yeah.
Necessary. And have the rest of it sound
And whereas there is a growing number. growing number of accelerated master's programs at SIUC, and students who begin in these programs would have to pay an out-of-state tuition rate when they become classified as graduate students. And whereas in-state tuition for all domestic students could serve as a recruiting tool for graduate programs, be it therefore resolved that the Graduate and Professional Student Council, or SIUC Graduate and Professional Student Council, supports a policy of charging in-state tuition for all domestic graduate students. All right, any further discussion on friendly amendments to that resolution? Put it up to a vote. All right, seeing none opposed, vote. All those in favor of adopting that resolution as friendly amended, or please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, motion passes. Thank you. That's awesome. And I'm sure that those in graduate council will appreciate that as well. How's everyone doing? Doing okay? It's 8:58. Late. But definitely getting business done, which is awesome. So the next item of business is officer reports. I'll give the floor to Liddy for the report from Vice Chancellor Director of School Affairs.
Got a lot of windows open, so. Okay. I'll try to make some of this brief so it's just more like updates, but I combined information from the most recent exec meeting, which happened on October 24th, as well as including some pieces of our upcoming meeting on Thursday, which I will yield the floor for a couple moments to one of the graduate council reps for some information for this upcoming meeting. First, in general, from the most recent exec meeting, just some general remarks from the provost. Our OT, the occupational therapy, physical therapy programs are moving forward. They're talking to SAH about arranging space and things like that, so those are moving forward. There's also a generous one-time donation lump sum for equipment and scholarships that they're going to be using to kickstart those programs. Several other program reviews are in progress right now, so if you're in one of those departments, perhaps you're under one of those reviews. There was some dean search updates. Two searches in engineering and school education have a November 30th deadline, and so when that happens, they'll move forward with review of applicants from that point. Currently, there is a dean of the school laws ongoing. At the time of the meeting, they were at the step to request for interview paperwork, but I'm confident that since it was 2 weeks ago, they're probably on to those interviews now, but that was the step they were on 2 weeks ago. The School of Ag is looking for an interim dean. At the time of this meeting, there were 4 applicants being reviewed. I'm sure by this time they have been reviewed and there's probably moving forward in those as well. From the Vice Chancellor for Research, there was a huge discussion of actually hemp on-campus policies, research, procedures, all those types of things. So that is becoming a conversation that's happening on campus. So it was like really lively debate / discussion in our exec meeting. So that is continuing, and perhaps you'll hear more about that soon. Within the Vice Chancellor for Research, there is a new Director of Compliance. I believe her name is Amy, but I can't remember if that's who you mentioned. But this is just someone that's helping with like animal compliance, human subject compliance, federal conflict of interest, that type of thing. So there is a new person there, which should make it run smoothly in that office. Also, for those of you who do human subject research, there were some changes over the summer that maybe your departments were or not informed of. So talking a little bit about how to better communicate some of that information, because it feels like some people have been submitting old paperwork and not the new kind. So they're talking about how they can communicate that better, not only in the future, but to those departments who may not have had those updates communicated to them thus far. Another thing that's happening is the OVCR mentioned that there is a person who's developing a portal with Missouri that's regarding research industry partnerships, so that people who are conducting research or have specialties can be part of a database of faculty and researchers. So not just faculty, but anyone who's researching, where an outside kind of company or party could actually go to this database and kind of insert like search fields about maybe people's research and potentially find people to employ for their research. So they're trying. This person, they mentioned who it was. The person I think who's currently coming up with it is at SLU, so St. Louis University. They're pushing to have this program live by January 1st, so you might be hearing about it at that time, and especially think about that considering what your research interests are and if they are valuable. Additionally, our Associate Dean and Director of the Graduate School mentioned that there's 2 research awards coming up. One is for the 3-minute thesis competition, and then the other one is for Outstanding Thesis Award. There was announcement of these in the November newsletter. So did we send that out already? Yeah, I thought it was on there. So check out the November newsletter. It has both of those details on there. Now I'm going to share some word-for-word stuff, so bear with me, but this is the updates about the Chancellor search, so I want to make sure I read it verbatim from what they give me to read. So the search is underway. The university will be creating a page on our website to provide information to the university community, the public, and potential candidates. Once that page is up and running, it will provide access to the advertisement/job announcement with full leadership profile, a listing of the membership of the search committee, and perhaps most importantly, ways to communicate with search committee and search consultants. The board has retained the service of Whitkeeper, which we already have mentioned previously, to support the search committee and the board in the conduct of the search. Those contacts are senior partner Dennis Barden, consultant Melissa Fincher, and associate Brie Liddell. I did mention last time too that Dennis visited the campus on October 10th and 11th as part of the firm's due diligence. He is also supporting the search for the president of the Southern Illinois University System and thus knew about the university before his arrival. So Whitkeeper is helping the search committee to recruit a strong pool of candidates and will help to catalyze our search process along the lines of best practices, but the search committee does control the process and our new system president and board will be the only decision makers. Excuse me. The search committee has been impaneled, as you know, because I am on it, and has held its initial organizational meeting. The charge is to conduct an open, inclusive, and wide-ranging search and to narrow the pool of candidates to a small group of finalists. Those finalists will be presented to the new president and the board unranked with a compendium of strengths and weaknesses. The membership of the committee is public and will be enumerated on the search webpage. So we've been asked to provide a lot of information so that is out there when the page goes live. The goal for the search is to be announced and publicly seeking candidates no later than November 1st. I looked and I didn't see it online yet, so I'm guessing it's coming up soon. So I'll keep you posted. We hope to conclude the search and have the new chancellor announced by SIU spring break. And as I mentioned in our previous meeting, hoping that the new chancellor then assume officially their responsibilities July 1st, 2020. Search committee has agreed that we will protect the confidentiality of the candidates through the first round of interviews with semifinalists. It's our intention to invite the finalists, likely 3 or 4 people, to visit the campus openly and publicly, and to invite the campus community to interact with and to provide feedback on the various candidates. You should be hearing more about this process in February. The committee's deliberations and the identity of all candidates except the finalists will remain confidential in perpetuity. The search committee is particularly desirous of candidate nominations and referrals from the SIUC community. All such ideas should be shared with our search consultants in a timely fashion. Contact information for the search consultants will be available on the page, and should you need it immediately, it's siucchancellor@whitkeeper.com. I can tell you too that in the last week we have reviewed the position announcement, and also this next week, anyone who's on the committee has to go through a diversity training session to ensure that we are equitable in our hiring practices. So that is all of the announcements. I want to make sure I shared all those because I know people are very interested in the searches, especially in light of us recently talking about the provost search. So I want to make sure I'm as transparent as possible about the chancellor search as we go forward. Also, are there any questions about that? Because I feel like that might be the one. I have other announcements, but I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. And then upcoming Thursday, we have a couple of policies and things that we're voting on. One policy is just an update from last academic year, about the adoption of dogs and cats after research. That one is not necessarily something we're voting on, it's just them updating us on policies that were voted on last year. We will be working on operating papers for the graduate school, which will include asking graduate students to be on that committee to assist in making decisions about the operating papers. Clay, that makes me think about the things you've been talking about the operating papers. So that will be really important that we have someone, perhaps it'll be a grad council the guide council cut, but it could also be someone from this body. So if you're interested, I know they're talking about the operating papers, yeah. I could talk to them about that, yeah. We do have a second reading of a resolution to allow programs to select internal reviewers. What this means is that the graduate council is supporting that departments have an opportunity to name one of their reviewers since they have the most familiarity. That doesn't negate that they'll be outside reviewers, just that they have the opportunity to actually name someone within their department. This makes it a little bit easier to conduct reviews more thoroughly and also more quickly. So that's what that one is. And then this is where I'm gonna pass the ball to you, Nicholas, real quick, to talk a little bit about those upcoming ones from your committee. Thank you.
This thing's still on.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so I'm on the new programs committee, so I'll just try to make this really quick. So when I'm looking for like, when I'm reviewing these proposals, I'm kind of looking for like, does it have like strong faculty support, any potential or beneficial changes to the curriculum, and then overall benefits to the university. So the first one here is supposed to be like a second reading. This is the first time I was hearing about that also. So I think this came up before. This is the resolution to recommend approval for the Fermentation Science Institute. And so I kind of highlighted any type of like key points or any red flags I saw in this. This one's pretty cool. This one, it was like running like a pilot program right now, and what they want to do is make it a permanent part of SIUC, so I made sure it was specifying Carbondale. They want to make it a 4-year bachelor degree of science for fermentation science. Currently, there's only 6 programs in the nation, so that make it number 7, so it'd be like very specific to this location. The program also has shown to be successful in obtaining like external funding. So like right now they have a $120,000 grant. They received a $90,000 industry donation, and they have another $5.5 million grant pending. And so this would be like really nice to push through. This is external funding even outside of the state of Illinois. So potentially not having to rely on any type of budgetary concerns within the university. It also has the potential to bring in any additional revenue by itself if it was implemented. This is done by testing and consulting services to local breweries, distilleries, and wineries. So I thought that was pretty sweet. Faculty positions line up. They have a nice line of strong researchers who have also demonstrated abilities to receive consistent grant funding, because the idea behind this new program would be the reliance on external grant funding. And so having a strong team of researchers that pull in that funding is advantageous. And then also the state of Illinois just sees the potential for this as a growing field of fermentation expertise. So the current votes right now, it's more or less the provost, associate provost of academic programs, and Dr. McCarl from biochemistry is a large proponent of it. He's also on this committee, so I made sure I didn't have any, any influence there. He kind of like, he stepped back. I was supposed to like just show me, the proposal, and I'll look over it. So I recommend we push for this. This is really good for SIU, Carbondale, also the external funding capabilities and potential future growth of this area, especially with like St. Louis, Anheuser-Busch being really close. Potential for students to go on to the externships. The next one here is just really quick, the resolution recommending eliminating the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and to establish the new School of Civil, Environmental and Infrastructure Engineering. This is just part of SIU's restructuring plan, so it's just really renaming programs, nothing really changes. Here. Same thing, they did the same thing with psychology. They eliminated the program or Department of Psychology and then just renamed it School of Psychological and Behavioral Sciences, where nothing really changed. And so the voting on that was 9 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain. So nothing changing formality-wise. Then the third one is resolution to recommend renaming the College of Business to the College of Business and Analytics. This is where it draws concern, is this is also asking to move the School of Management and Marketing and the School of Analytics, Finance, and Economics into this new college. So it's another name changer, but it's also moving older programs and schools into the new college. And we've actually had issues with this when we had our name change. But it's procedural, and it's a lot of issues come up after the fact. It's unknown consequences. And so that would be really the only concern. Another one would be there's no immediate budgetary effects, but those will come on later. But there's no change to faculty, students, or equipment or curriculum. So making sure that. So the votes of that was 15 yes, 2 no, 0 abstain. But then there was another vote the same day. I think that was also in the attachment that had 7 yes, 0 no, and 1 abstain. So I don't know, there was no labeling of why that was different. And then there's this one. This one is really interesting. This is the Doctor of Medical Sciences. It's supposed to be part of the medical school's physician assistant program. This one has major red flags. I really do not understand why they are pushing for this. So this program is meant to develop a diverse group of doctoral level trained PAs, or physician assistants, who practice both clinically and in the academic setting, and to advance the PA profession. Entry to this program would require people who have graduated from a physician assistance program and have active licensure. The program is designed to be 12 months long by students who are currently working as physician assistants. I thought that was really ridiculous as far as time-wise. The packet references another school as also doing a 12-month program requiring 37 credits. And this is, again, while people are trying to work as physician assistants. And so it's the impossibility that goes along with this. There's 21 credits that are supposed to be completed while they're working, and those are delivered via online courses. And so we got another issue with an accelerated doctorate degree being an online degree with health professionals. It's kind of strange. And then they're trying to push this program to also involve research. And so my question was, where do you have the time to do research if you're working full time and taking a bunch of online classes, and you don't get a lot of scholarly work done with online class modules? And they're trying to push for that. And then it's also, they want to house this within the School of Medicine. They don't want this program to share resources with the current physician assistant program. That makes absolutely no sense. There's the potential for any redundancy, so they could overlap classes or curriculum. The estimated cost for the first year is $487,000. $300,000 for faculty for the non-assistant program, and no overlapping of those resources with the current PA program we have. And then the next year, they called for $668,000 when this program is fully implemented, and $400,000 is supposed to go toward faculty. And these are online courses. This calls for at least one program director and one full-time faculty member. And so there's a lot of issues. They mention with the amount of students they think would enroll, the tuition would cover those costs. They show no evidence of that. And then another red flag is with this doctoral program, this does not fall under the purview of the accreditation body that oversees any type of review or education of physician assistants. And so we are potentially pushing for an unaccredited program that's going to cost a lot of money and to maintain and then be able to obtain any type of accreditation. And so right now the faculty vote on this is 8 yes, 0 no, and 6 abstain. And then there's another college curriculum committee vote of 22 yes, 0 no, and 0 abstain. And I do not recommend voting for this. That concludes that.
Sorry, what was the degree? What was the actual program?
It is a doctoral degree of medical science. unspecified specifically for a physician assistant.
I've never met a PA that went to school after.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Another issue that came up is there's only one school in the US that has this like online 12-month program, and it's a private institution. And there's no rationale for it. It would not fit in the context of the.
So they want to spend a bunch of money to see what can happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more, but these were like the main red flags. Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, so part of the reason why we're doing this is because obviously we vote on behalf of you. So what we talked about recently is making sure you have a little bit of knowledge of kind of what we're voting on, which also means like if there's any questions, like we can obviously answer those, or if you have feedback or thoughts on how you would like us to ask questions, or if you have ideas on our votes, then you can just kind of touch base with us afterwards as well. So that was the key. That was an excellent display of why we did it. Like you do, more questions. Because we, again, represent you, so we don't want to just be voting like how we would vote. We want to make sure that you are all knowledgeable about what we're voting on behalf of. So that concludes my remarks. So if there's no questions, or if there are, this is the time before I pass the floor on. Questions, comments? Thank you.
The only thing I would have is a potential comment, particularly for the doctoral medicine science.
Yep.
What I mean is, the overwhelming question is this the best use of resources?
Yes.
Because in the hypothetical that we have to have some amount of upstart costs, even in the idea of maybe getting some back, is that the most effective use of existing resources?
One of the serious rationales for proposing this was that they asked and surveyed current PA students and asked them if there was their feedback from a survey they asked was, the students said, well, if there was a doctoral program that was less than a year long, I would apply to it, so I can get like the 1-year doctorate from online.
And that was provided as like evidence of why they should do it.
They say that now.
Yeah.
While they're still on school.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this a first or a second?
This is a good question. So technically it's not a second reading, it's the second time it's been brought up. So what's happening actually that you should know too is this has been highly contested, not only in Nicholas's committee, but also in the graduate council itself. The executive board has basically said like, we're not gonna read it until someone comes in to talk more about it. So on Thursday, there's supposed to be a representative that is coming to talk about the program and the proposed resolution and all the details. So we're really hoping that we can kind of start answering some of those, like, this is a red flag, like what do you have in response to it? So on Thursday, I imagine a lot of our time will be dedicated to this particular NUI. And again, any feedback you have or thoughts that you have or questions you may have, this will be an opportune time to let us know after the meeting so we can take that with us, because I imagine with the guest speaker, there will be lots of opportunity to ask those questions. So good question on the reading.
All right, move on to the next item. Diane?
All right, mine's quick and easy. The application board did not meet today, so we didn't have any items to review. As far as the amount of event funding hasn't changed because of that, so we have spent $6,825 towards events, and that means $7,175 is remaining. We've had at this point 40 applicants for our career development reimbursement award, with plenty of funding remaining. As of now, we've only spent $5,775, and then we also did have the additional funding added from the Alumni Association. So I encourage you all to keep on reminding your colleagues and also for yourselves if you're going to be attending a conference. Once you've because you can apply for this before you actually go to the conference, as long as you show proof of registration and if you are presenting proof of presentation. So that would just be an email saying that you were accepted to present your research, or it could be a copy of the program or whatever you find to be efficient. And that's it. You're welcome.
All right, no questions. Move on to my report, President. So I sent you an updated, and I had to update it again to be determined whether I'll send out another copy of this. But Board of Trustees
trustees, for my report, they had that special meeting October 25th. I don't think this was in the previous report, but I have a link to the Southern Illinoisan article on that, and the idea that the board chair says, SIU president expected to be announced at the December meeting. Their December meeting being December 5th here in Carbondale. So potentially the search for a president will be concluded at that board of trustees meeting December 5th. Also under SIU affairs, SIUC affairs, for the internal search for the Vice Chancellor Academic Affairs Provost, I think this is an item that I added. It's not in the updated one that I sent the second email today, but there's a Daily Egyptian article from 4 days ago, I believe it is, that is on the internal search for new SIs. It's an interesting article, has a good number of quotes in it. I can send the report out that has a link embedded in it. You can also just look on the Daily Egyptian's website. But it is a good article that's out there. That is one that's in addition to the WSIU in Focus radio interview that the Chancellor did that I included in that. We did have a discussion about the search for the provost during the constituency head meeting that we had on October 23rd. Where the representative from the Civil Service Council asked about the search itself, got a number of responses. I asked as well some follow-up questions about the search. We can go over that if there's any questions on it, but we did have the report that I sent over, so you have those bullet points to look at. There was a constituency heads meeting on October 23rd. There wasn't anything too exciting out of that meeting, apart from the provost search questions, some of the issues about university finances and searches in general. State of the University address is tomorrow at 3 in the student center ballrooms right down the hall. Student trustee Brianna Lockett having campus conversation, student response to that State of the University after that in the student center building. We have the flyer that you have for it, I believe actually in the report. I got the time wrong. Yeah, it's 4:30 to 5:30 in the saline room in the student center, which is down in the river rooms, down the hall this way, here on the second floor as well. So you've got that flyer that was up on the table, as well as should be in the emails for the meeting. Come on, flyers. Looks like that. It looks similar to one that we already have before. Higher Learning Commission student survey. This was a big item that I just got some emails on. I attached these in the original email that went out, but I mentioned before in one of the committee reports that I had that one of the instruments of the Higher Learning Commission's reaccreditation and site visit was that there would be a student survey that is sent out from the Student Affairs Division of the university that is data collected from HLC from the students. Well, emails as well as the post on SIU Online or D2L have actually gone up. I included basically screenshots of both the email that I received as well as the D2L that I saw the post on D2L. So each of you should have received that. I included the titles of what the D2L post as well as the email at least that I received or saw are titled. So you can take a look at that and include that survey. And it's data that goes right back to the Higher Learning Commission. Becomes part of the reaccreditation and site visit for the Higher Learning accreditation.
None of that too. So if you're a teaching assistant, it actually appeared on your course announcements. It's not even as a module or like that. It actually is embedded in your each individual course announcement.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like the news bulletin. I like never use D2L though. So that's weird. And then the email that you're getting is the one associated with the university's central administration. So if you notice, it's actually like an email for me, which I don't understand why that is, but it may not be your SIU email essentially. You actually get email these surveys. For whatever reason, it's a Gmail one. It's probably the email I used to apply. But if you have questions on that, happy to help. But do encourage everyone to complete that survey. Do make sure that your constituents back in your departments and your units are aware of it. University committees. It is a little crazy. There's bullet points there to make sense out of some of it, but I'm trying to track down and get connected to everybody wants with committees. Some of these are coming back, and then essentially the committees either are inactive or have actually basically been disbanded or reorganized. And so I'm going to be reaching out to a few of us that essentially the committee doesn't exist, for which you volunteered and were nominated to, and we'll have to go forward with that, and then ongoing work on getting
all of our committee records and everything and all that updated. But it's been a bit of an interesting show so far. Executive board had our meeting. Some of the big things came under discussion is development work that we're hoping to complete and get up and going and get some money with the help of the SIU Foundation. Implementing our academic and research board as far as a committee structure to focus on strategic planning and action for things related to graduate academics and research. And then thinking about outreach and membership action and how we'll best address that. And then the last bit that I have that we certainly don't have time for is thinking about strategic plans or strategic planning and how we might best go about doing that in GPSC. It's been something that's come on and off the agenda the last couple of meetings, mostly due to time or ill preparedness. But going forward, thinking about how we can actually do that, there's bullet points on that about why I feel like those are important things to incorporate into the business that we do. I'll leave it at that. Time was for the council. Is there any questions on the report? Questions, more information, or context? All right. Let's see, where are we on our agenda? Committee reports. I know that there was a number of committees that met, some of which were my own. I think I attached a couple of the committee reports that I've got to the most recent email. Is there any committee reports anyone wants to bring forward? Yes.
I have something quick. So I got nominated to the traffic and parking higher appeals, so it's the second level of appeals board. We had our first meeting on the 28th of October. These are numbers I'm allowed to share. I can't share anything further than these numbers go. So there were 13 citations that were under review. Only three showed up. 2 were granted and 1 was denied. So those are just the numbers from this previous meeting. So I got it. It's actually really fun.
That would be it.
Cool. Yes.
The intercollegiate athletic advisory committee. We've had last
Yeah, I'm ready. Sir. Yeah. Yes.
The honorary degree and distinguished service awards committee met yesterday. 5 people's names were put forward, 3 for an honorary degree, 2 for a distinguished service award. They are really cool people who definitely are deserving. I can't say their names because they'll be notified, but that's exciting.
Well, y'all know this already, but I'm on the program search committee. I apologize. Get the state, get the scope in this room. But we are going to be moving quickly. I'm kind of unclear about some of the stuff I can say, so I'm not going to say much on it. We'll be having, well, I am allowed to say that I know that we'll be having forums for the individuals to have a chance to talk with faculty and staff as well as students. And so I will work with our exec board to get time, but we're looking at
is the thinking on that prior to the break for Thanksgiving?
yes.
Yeah.
So like next week. Okay.
It's just gonna try to follow the same
morning.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. I attached the committee reports that I had. It was
campus-wide assessment, was kind of an interesting thing there. Planning the budget advisory. We had a meeting, I attached my summary. We got the report from the subcommittee. I didn't attach the actual report from the subcommittee, and that was just because I was trying to get everything out as quick as I could. But I'll follow up with that. But we did hear it. We had the summary of some of the highlights from that report that came from the subcommittee on tuition and fees, and the recommendations that were in it. So we had an interesting discussion about it. The report that I have there is on that. Essentially, the biggest point is that the subcommittee did not recommend an increase in tuition, and we had some recommendations relative to fees. So the whole advisory committee has now heard that, and I'll follow up with actual reports that came from the subcommittee, because now that it's hit the desk of the advisory committee, I can actually share that with everyone. So I'll follow it up with that actual report. And I'm sure we'll be advised as to what the response from the central administration will be on that. We had a constitutional committee meeting. Anything else on committee affairs? Yes.
So I am on the computing advisory committee. Nothing really for students, really. It's a lot more for the institution people employed. Just a couple of notes. Due to budget cuts next year, they're repurposing some general access labs. Some labs or some classrooms that have labs in them, like computers, they probably will take computers out if they're not necessary to the class subject. Prime example was some of the painter and all of them. They'll probably take those out and go to the Morris Library. They also are talking about moving away from having actually physical desktops and going to like a virtual system, which if you're not familiar with it, basically you log in through a smart device and you log into the desktop remotely, and that desktop is ran by a server, and all the apps that are on that, so you don't actually have to like have a physical desktop. You can use it on your phone or you can have a laptop. It's actually really new, innovative way of technology. It also is a very heavy screen, heavy like bandwidth. So they're going to do with that. But if you have multiple things going in one bandwidth issue, yeah. I don't think it's really pertinent to anybody, but if you have a huge amount of stuff in your Office 365 mailbox, you're changing the licensing on it to reduce the size. Nothing else is changing for it. Just the mailbox size, you're going to reduce it down. But all the apps, all the Microsoft stuff will still be accessible. They didn't say. But there is no timeline on that, so you have time to go through your mailbox.
Hopefully the memorandum.
Yeah. I don't think it's really pertinent to us, but they're trying to go with landlines and go to Microsoft Teams. They feel the point. VoIP is more cost-effective now because landlines right now are outdated. So trying to push to Microsoft Teams, try to get a license involved with that. Still early in the stage though. Back up your data on cloud service they suggest, so if you have an Apple or Mac, iCloud, OneDrive, personal preference, if you don't feel comfortable with that, I'm not very comfortable with that, so, but they say just for safety. And then they are also going to start implementing two-factor authentication for SaluteNet in your office. So that's going to be an option starting in spring. But by the summer of next year, it will be mandatory for everybody. So just know that's coming. Most people already use it in some capacity, so it's not unfamiliar for people. And then lastly, they just put a word out for ransomware. So if you see a suspicious email, don't click it, don't click inside of it, just for safety reasons.
Any questions? Community advisory? Any additional committee reports? Thank you all that reported on the committees. It's awesome. That was even more than I thought. Okay. So second to last item, go to the order. If I can jump in real quick, I attached a number of announcements to the email. One that or a couple that I wanted to point out. One is the thing that says like directors all spin the audit. That is for the Student Programming Council. I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention specifically because this is something that GPSC has come up before. We actually passed a resolution a few years back asking for money to be taken from the Student Programming Council because they put on programming that's not particularly relevant all the time to graduate students. Well, this flyer is calling for applicants to actually be on the board that makes decisions about what they do with the money that they do receive from the student activity fee, just like we receive money from the student activity fee. So, insofar as it's been something that's important to graduate students in GPSC in the past, it's actually an opportunity for graduate students to be more involved in the kind of decision and programming that is put on with essentially student activity fees, the same source of revenue that we are funded by actually applying to be a director on the Student Programming Council's board of directors. And so you have that attachment. If you have any questions about it, but the deadline for the applications is 4:30 on November 8th, so basically this Friday. But it is something that if anybody's interested, I would encourage you looking at. The flyer is there. The other one that I wanted to point out is that the university is finally doing something in the form of some kind of policy briefing or question and answer or something about the legalization of cannabis in the state of Illinois that takes effect in January, which the city of Carbondale is providing for persons to be licensed to be a dispensary in city limits. And so I'm not quite sure of exactly everything that will be covered by the joint presentation of students' legal assistance and student rights and responsibilities. But the policies that will govern this stuff on campus is going to be additional policies on top of whatever the state law is. And there's a bunch of nuance, and there's a bunch of things that for folks that probably be interested in knowing what those are. I only have done a quick cursory thing, and more or less what I've seen so far in just some of the policies, the idea that like for whatever reason, if you get in trouble to where someone has the legal ability to do search your person and you have marijuana on you, even though the state has made it legal for you to possess some, you could lose your graduate assistantship on this campus. Like, it's actually a pretty complicated and nuanced affair with a bunch of crazy policies. So I think that this is probably going to be really useful to go to. I think I'm actually out of town for this, unfortunately, and so I won't be there. I will try and get as much information so that I can bring it back, but I encourage everybody to attend. It will have definite ramifications.
When is that?
It is Tuesday, November 12th, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. in Student Services Building 150, 160. And this should have been attached to one of the meeting reminders that went out earlier today. They're up on bulletin boards and stuff. But it is something I've been asking about for months, in the sense of some kind of policy guidance or memorandum or whatever that draws everyone's attention to the existing policies the university has, some of which cannot change because they are governed by the federal laws of the Department of Education and others, basically relating to financial aid, that they can't change those. So it doesn't matter that the state of Illinois is potentially decriminalizing recreational possession and sale and etc. because we're governed by the federal laws. And they have to enforce those federal policies in order to maintain their federal things, like even receiving grant research and stuff. So it's actually rather complicated and nuanced, important to know about. You also have a bunch of other great flyers and email. Those are the big ones that I had. Does anybody else have any? Go to the order. Yes?
So I'm the graduate assistant for the student programs. We are getting ready to hire orientation leaders. So I'm going to be sending to Clay to send out to y'all a nomination form. If y'all know any like excited, dynamic, like great undergrads, like just fill out the form real quick. It'll take like 2 minutes, not even. And so we can give them the application because we really want some good students to help welcome new students to campus.
And I would just say grab pizza on your way out, and if you didn't sign in on your way in, make sure you're signing in on your way out. There's no pizza?
No, I'm sad. I came late. There's no pizza.
Yes, you sign in.
Sign in though.
But happy with all of you.
And I will add here, particularly the last bit, is thank you everyone for hanging in there, including those that have had to leave already. We got a lot of really great business done. Definitely a very good meeting. Thank you much. There is nothing further for business this evening. I've entertained a motion to adjourn. So moved, a second, I heard a second. All those in favor of adjourning, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Next meeting is November 19th at 7:30. We'll have a presentation, Graduate Assistants United.
I don't even know what's